Welcome to Beyond the Inbox, the guide to the 2024 digital landscape. And I don't know how we got to the end of 2023 so quickly. I can remember because I remember last January and New Year's resolutions and all that jazz. But then, as it happens, here we are again doing. So we're going to try and talk about some things that are interesting to you guys, that are useful. We've got some like itty bitty like tactical bits you can do straight away. And then we've also got some longer term AI regulation thoughts using AI things. So there's a mix of what you can do immediately and what you just need to be thinking about to try and make it, a bit worthwhile for the long term as well as just the short term. There. So those of you who haven't met us before, we've done a few webinars and bits and pieces together. My name's Richard Wall. I'm marketing campaign manager, which in practice means I do a little bit of everything. A lot of webinar presenting, quite a lot of blog writing, research. So this has been me going down lots of rabbit holes to try and find interesting information about stuff, and I've really enjoyed it. And I've tried to condense down everything that's in my brain from this into usable little segments. Hope that's useful. Then my co-host today is Kate Barrett, founder and CEO of eFocus Marketing. She's done a lot of work with us in the past, done some webinars. We've also got a joint podcast coming up. So if you like this combination, 2024 is going to be really good for podcasts.
I was going to say, spoiler alert.
Oh,
it's coming mid-January. So yeah, look out for our new podcast. It's called Email and Beyond, and we'll let you all know when it's live, but hopefully you'll enjoy those conversations.
There we go. Thank you. And you can say we've put both our LinkedIn profiles in there, so connect with us. As we say, we're going to do some light surface stuff and some deep stuff. So if you want to follow up on anything you've talked to, we've mentioned here afterwards, LinkedIn is there. I think on the last slide we put our email addresses as well, so you can follow along on there. A few bits and pieces of housekeeping stuff that we always do. I reckon the content we've got between us is about 40 minutes out of this hour, so we've got 20 minutes or so for questions, follow-ups, extra bits and pieces that come up. So you can, a few of you have noticed the chat function. There's also a questions tab, and I'd like to encourage you to use the questions tab first, because then GoToWebinar saves them against your registered email address. So if we run out of time, or if it's a question that's a lot deeper or really specific to your situation that we need to kind of follow up one-to-one, it's much easier for us to do it if you put it in the questions tab. Just a little admin bit there, and as I put the questions in at any point as we're going through, and then we'll answer them at bulk at the end, just for the sake of flow, if you like. All these webinars are recorded, as they always are. We'll polish it up, take out that bit at the beginning when I was asking for you to make sure you could see me. And then so we'll aim to have it out for views, or Wednesday lunchtime. It's 24 hours. Give us just to polish it, load it up, send it out to you. Keep an eye on your inbox. If you don't get it, A, reach out to us, and B, it will also go up a couple of hours after that on SpotlerUK/resources for you to download and keep. So if you want to watch it back, go through anything, you don't need to worry about taking notes, because it'll all be there, and we'll make it as easy as possible for you to get hold of this content and reuse it. There are emails are there actually, rather than I said they're on the last slide. They're actually on the housekeeping slide. So that's webinars at Spotler, hopefully generic, and then our individual ones for specific follow-up questions. Now, as we said, we're going to touch on some strategic stuff, some tactical stuff. The first one we're doing is iOS, because I've had a lot of people ask me questions about what that means, and this is link tracking protection. It's not as scary as it sounds, but we'll get into what it means. Yahoo and Google, that's what we talked about. We're going to, in the promotion, in the build-up for this, we're actually going to keep that fairly short in this presentation, because having looked at it and spoken to our dev team, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here that isn't being talked about. So that's worth an entire webinar in January. So keep your eye out on the SpotlerUK/events and your email inbox, and we'll do a full deep dive on that, because it's really worth the time. There's, again, not terrifying. It's just bits you need to start getting done. We're doing it in January because Google are going to start enforcing it in February. Millenials is a dud label. I found this just really interesting as a longer term thing. We talk about segmentation all the time. Millenials isn't a segmentation thing you can do anymore. And Pew Research, from these very big, well-respected bodies, says actually there's more going on here. It's a bit lazy. So we're going to talk a bit more about what you can do instead. The rise of AI, we couldn't not talk about it after this year. It's been a huge topic. It's going to continue to be a huge topic. I'm going to try and give you the practical tips and extra bits on there. And then we followed up with me going down a massive rabbit hole of current UK government thinking about AI regulation. heads up, it's a 93-page white paper that I read, and I got really into the details. I've tried to pull out like 4 or 5 key things. I'll put the links will be in the slides as well, so you can digest it at your leisure. But that's a lot. There's plenty going on there, but that's precisely why we wanted to bring it to your attention. So iOS 17, everyone's panicking about it, but actually, this is why the stuff you can do, the stuff you need to do, but panicking is not one of them. So if you read Apple's press release, link tracking protection, some websites add extra information to their URLs in order to track users across other websites. This will now be removed from links that users share. If any of that sounds familiar, then give yourself a third-party cookie, because this is layer 2 of getting rid of third-party tracking across all things. And there's 2 ways you can look at this as a trend and for what it means. You can take the technical route of understanding privacy in big tech, and that's if you're of a very technical mindset, you can do that, or you can do what I think of as the political angle, which is what do Apple do? Well, no, what do Apple do that Meta and Google particularly, and a big tech, don't do when it comes to using third-party data to make money, because that's how Apple can take bites out of 2 big rivals. I'd say, look, we don't make money from advertising, we make money from the products and the apps that you use directly, so we don't need your data, but that's why we can be the champions of privacy. So if you see things that Meta and Google are using to make money for advertisers, that's where Apple's going to be focusing its attention, because that's their USP, their how they separate themselves out from the rest of the big tech pack, and that's what that's doing. Now, so first action, do not panic. Firstly, third party. So if you've got all your first party tracking, your UTMs, these bits, like things like that, which you should all hopefully have, and if you're using the Spotler platforms, you will have by default in your emails, your socials, and things like that, they are not affected. So you'll still know if you post on X about a webinar you're hosting, exhibition you're attending, someone clicks through, registers on a form on your website, you'll still know that they came from that channel, because that's in the realm of first party data interacting with you directly, and you're going to be fine using that. Now, to dive into it more, Litmus, who are a good deliverability and design company, they've done some research and pulled out as many tracking parameters as they can who are affected. And this is the list they've come up with. So if you're a HubSpot user, you definitely need to pay attention to this bit, because there's a lot of HubSpot on there. There's quite a bit of MailChimp, there's quite a bit of Marketo as well. I mean, I don't think we know anyone who uses Yandex personally, because that's Russian, Yandex. But if you're using any of these kind of parameters or anything similar, then yes, you do need to take a look at what it means for you directly. Spotler weren't included in Litmus's research, unfortunately, but I've been with our tech team and had a look at all the different ways I could think of that this might affect our tracking, and it seems to be fine. We will keep an eye on it, because it would be irresponsible not to, but as of right now, it seems that any Spotler tracking is fine, because we're focusing on the first party stuff. Now, the other thing you can do, and the next thing you should all do, have a look at actually how much of your audience is this going to affect, because for us, mobile isn't huge. Actually, this is a snapshot, a representative campaign from a set of leads. In terms of this is non-current customers, essentially. And I took the browser breakdown, and only 3% of 3% of people are using any form of iOS. Weirdly, there was a couple of people there using iOS 10. They like their iPhone the way it was, and they are not catching up. So don't need to worry about them at all. But so iOS 17, it's part of our audience. We need to think about it, but it's not. If Microsoft start doing the same thing, then Windows users as more than a third of our leads, then we need to jump in and start doing more things. But for now, not too many people. I'm not saying this is what your audience will be doing. If you're in a very mobile-driven industry environment, go and look. My point is, go and look at your audience and find out. If you're a Spotler user, the way I did this, go to a representative campaign, go on the results, and click on the browser breakdown. You can export it as a CSV, or you can look at it as a graph in the platform. So it's pretty easy to find. And just for comparison's sake, I also did a look at, the last one was customers. Got that the wrong way around. I only made the graphs the same colors. I should have changed those. But either both leads and customers, 3% of our audience use iOS. So We need to look at it, but we are not going to panic. It's not the end of the world. So that's iOS in a nutshell. Kate, I'm going to hand over to you now. If I can do that, if I make you presenter, then hopefully you can share your screen now and do us a little overview of Yahoo and Google updates.
Absolutely. So I'd loved all of that information you've just said, Rich. And I think the key thing is look at your audience, right? Because obviously you're dealing with the B2B side. So I think iOS is always going to be a slightly lower number. When you're dealing with B2C, chances are that's probably a bigger percentage of your audience. So it's definitely worth looking at. And I think this is where the difference as we come into this next section comes into play as well with the Yahoo and Google email updates. But of course, let's not forget from the B2B side that a lot of people are using like the Gmail platform, for example, to run their business emails through. So whether you're B2B or B2C, it's really important that you really take notice of all of the changes that are happening and see how they're going to affect you. So the first thing to think about, and I believe that kind of dormant addresses and some initial work is starting now with Yahoo and Google, but from February 2024 as the official month that it's happening, both of those companies will start to enforce new rules for bulk senders. So bulk senders is anyone who sends more than 5,000 messages a day to Gmail and Yahoo users. So again, I'm guessing that's probably a lot of you on the call today. Now, what they're doing is they're not actually doing anything crazy. I've got to say, from my point of view as an email expert and someone who's been working in the industry for kind of 16, 17 years now, all of the elements that they're bringing into play are things that were best practice anyway, things that we should be doing to help our audience, to help the receiving mailbox providers understand who we are and that we are who we say we are, and then helping those subscribers by providing highly relevant messages. So I'm not going to say that there's anything, groundbreaking here. This is all stuff we should be doing anyway, but now is a good chance as we wrap up 2023 and go into 2024 to really think about how are we dealing with these elements? How can we improve what we're doing? So let's just very quickly go through each one of the 4 items that is coming into play for Gmail and Yahoo. And as Rich said, there will be a whole webinar on this that you can dig into in January. So look out for that one. But just to give you the highlights, we're talking about email authentication. We're talking about unsubscribes, and we're talking about keeping a low spam complaint rate. So starting with that authentication side, this really is the settings, the connections that tell the receiving mailbox provider that you are who you say you are and that they can trust you. And this is primarily, not solely, but primarily created with your DKIM records and your SPF records. So it's well worth in this kind of time between Christmas and New Year, just going and checking out those records and making sure that they are as tight as they should be, set up in the right way. And you can use tools like Zero Bounce, or I've put a link to MX Toolbox at the bottom of the screen there that I find really helpful to run those records through and see what comes back from them. But this is definitely the first stage in authentication. Again, you should have these in place anyway, but just check that they're all correct, all aligned, and all up to date. Because once you've got these 2 in place, the next step for you is to be thinking about a DMARC record if you don't already have one. So DMARC stands for Domain-Based Message Authentication, Reporting and Confirmation. Quite a mouthful. That's why we break it down to DMARC. Now, what I will say here is that with DMARC, I've certainly seen businesses who have implemented this. They've gone straight to the highest level of P equals reject as their record setting. And instantly, all of those messages that have been going out from that brand have started to go to the junk folder. So my key warning area for you here is make sure that you firstly, and your IT team, firstly implement that DMARC record correctly at P equals none. When you're ready to start monitoring and seeing what's coming into those DMARC records, you can then start to move up to your quarantine. And when you're happy that everything is correct and as it should be, you can then move up to that reject status. But start at none, then quarantine, then reject. Make sure that you're really analyzing the notifications that are coming through before you take it to those higher levels. Make sure your SPF and your DKIM records are all aligned. Otherwise, your own messages are going to fail your DMARC filter, which will send you straight to the junk folder. So work with your IT teams, make sure that they are implementing and monitoring before they go to those stronger levels on the DMARC record. So that's your authentication and the 3 key things that you need to be thinking about there and can start to have a think about and a look at before we get into February next year. But something to consider from a user experience side is certainly your unsubscribe process. So what Gmail and Yahoo are asking for here is that you offer your subscribers a one-click unsubscribe option for every message that you send. So like we've got with the example on the screen from Philips, once you click that unsubscribe button, you're taken to a page that says you have been unsubscribed. Done, dusted, tick. Now, of course, for you strategically on this page, you could then say you've been unsubscribed, we confirm this. Would you like to update your preferences? Tell us the types of messages that you would like to receive and have some control over that, because certainly our subscribers like that. So you could add in that preference enter option as a second stage, but that initial click on an unsubscribe link within your email needs to be a one-click unsubscribe. So when I was going through and looking for examples of this, the amount of companies that I saw that had a 2-click unsubscribe. So you would click on the unsubscribe link, go to the page, you'd have to put in your email address, or you'd have to tick a link to confirm that you wanted to be unsubscribed or press another button. So that's a 2-click process. So we really need to be making sure we've got that one-click unsubscribe as our core action, as an unsubscribe, not a core action in your emails, obviously. That would be your call to action. But as that unsubscribe, make sure it's one click. Now, one of the other ways that you can do this, you want to do it on your main unsubscribe, but an additional element that you can bring in that allows you to have that additional one-click unsubscribe option is using the list unsubscribe header. So this is a technical piece of coding that is put into your email. So this isn't something that you would code into your email design or anything like that. It will come from your ESP, so Spotler systems, for example, where it will include options for an unsubscribe. As I said, this is extra, and you can see from the examples on your screen, if I turn on my little laser pointer, you can see if you're looking at it within an Apple device, it might come up in a bar like this. If you're looking at it in Gmail, for example, you'll see unsubscribe after that sender information. Now, in the background, in your header code for your emails, this is what Spotler, for example, would have built in for you. You can see this last one at the bottom is list unsubscribe. Now, there are 2 options generally with list unsubscribe. There's the mail to, which sends you an email to say somebody wants to unsubscribe, or there's the one-click unsubscribe URL. So make sure that whatever provider you're working with, whether it's Spotler or if you're not currently a Spotler customer, then make sure that your email service provider is including that one-click HTTP version of your list unsubscribe header. It's an additional way that we can help to meet those regulations. And if you've got a good sending reputation from a deliverability side, then this will then be enabled to allow for that unsubscribe option as well. As well as having those links and as well as making sure that the process is really easy, what we need to do is make sure that unsubscribes are looked at, honored, and actioned very, very promptly. So for Yahoo and Google, they've now stated that those unsubscribe requests need to be processed within 2 days. But I've got to be honest, I mean, looking at this, I thought most platforms nowadays, and certainly the clients that we work with, most of those unsubscribe requests get dealt with instantly. But I managed to find an example just going through my emails where that's not the case. So with this company, and I won't say who it is, it's pretty obvious it's a holiday company, but I won't say which holiday company. And I noticed this little message at the bottom. This can take up to 7 days to update. That's not what we want to be doing. We need to be making sure that as close to real time as we can, but certainly within those 2 days, that we're taking people out of those messages. Now, again, if we think about, this isn't just Yahoo and Google saying this is customer experience. If somebody's unsubscribed from you, 2 days later, they're still in your email list. 7 days later, they're still in your email list. Chances are they might receive another message. Now, if they receive another message after they've unsubscribed, that increases your propensity for them to click on the spam or junk button and register a complaint. So we've got to be thinking about the customer experience here, and this isn't something that you should be letting just slide. These unsubscribe requests really need to be processed quickly. And again, like I said at the beginning of this section, all of these things are common sense, customer experience, best practice that we should all be doing anyway. So if there's an issue with how your data is connected and processing those unsubscribe requests, get on that now, because it's going to take you probably a little while to get that fixed. And what we don't want to be doing is increasing our spam complaint rate. And that is the last section of what Gmail and Yahoo are asking you to do. Now, again, we've known for quite a while, certainly from a Gmail side, that their threshold was 0.3%. So we've known that for many, many, many years. What we need to be making sure here is that we're really understanding what our customers want. Because somebody's going to press that spam or junk button when the message is irrelevant. If they've unsubscribed and you haven't taken them out of your list, if it's not appealing to them, or if they don't remember signing up, perhaps as well. So what you want to really do, whether you're B2B or B2C, is make sure that you answer 2 questions. But what I will put a little caveat on before I tell you those questions is, for B2B, chances are you're not going to see spam complaint rates. For Gmail, whether you're B2B or B2C, you are not going to see spam complaint rates. So Yahoo, Microsoft all have what we call feedback loops, which tell the receiving, the sending ESP who has complained to what message, exactly who that person is, so that Spotler, for example, can then remove those automatically for you for your next sends. Gmail doesn't do that because Gmail likes to do its own thing. What Gmail have is postmaster tools where you can get a little bit more information about the rates of spam complaints that you're receiving from your users, but you won't find out the individual users. So here, what it really is about is your strategy, understanding your audience and making sure that what you're sending to them is wanted. So look at your data collection processes. Did they sign up for this? Have they given you information about what their preferences are? Are you using your data to make sure that you're making your content in the second stage as valuable as it can be? So this is sending right message, right person, right time. Think about your strategy, your content, how you're going to drive positive engagement within your audience. So ensuring a low spam complaint rate isn't as easy as it sounds, unfortunately, because it literally is start to finish your entire strategic process, your segmentation, your personalization, your automation, connecting to that audience. And as I mentioned, because Gmail works differently, certainly what you can do is go and sign yourself up for Gmail Postmaster Tools. It's done based on your domain. So as long as you've got your domain and you've got access to confirm that, speak to your IT department, you'll be able to sign up for this. And if you're sending a high enough volume, you will have reports that are then shown within Postmaster Tools, like the user reported spam rate that you can see here. Now you can see from the example that I have pulled out from one of our clients, back in September, they had a 0.7% complaint rate. Now generally it has stayed under 0.3, but certainly here it got a lot higher. So what you want to be doing around complaint rate is really understanding, where are these complaints coming from? Was it a certain list that we sent to, a certain email type? Are you seeing consistent complaints coming in from certain email types? So we worked with, and there's a couple of great case studies on the eFocus marketing website, talking about a company called MVF, who certainly had some issues with Microsoft. So we're not talking about Microsoft today, but works the same as Gmail effectively and Yahoo. They had a problem with Microsoft, and what we found by really digging into that it was the initial welcome messages that were going out. They were sending about 3 or 4 in one day. We can understand why people were complaining about it. So we changed that strategy. We had one email, we had dynamic content blocks, and that spam complaint rate reduced enormously, and their deliverability went up. So all of these elements, whether you have people using Gmail and Yahoo or not, you should be doing these things anyway for the health of your list and the enjoyment of your subscribers. So that's a very quick roundup on the Gmail and Yahoo changes, but regardless of that, you should be doing these things anyway. Because it's all about understanding your audience. It's all about knowing who they are and what they need. And I think that really connects into this next section that we wanted to talk to you about, which is the kind of the broad label of millennials and the other labels that we give to people within our audience, certainly to kind of group them in this way. And what we found in the Pew Research was that there's been a growing chorus of criticism about generational research and generational labels in particular. Now, the thing is with kind of general labels like this is that they can perpetuate bias and stereotyping, and that's not something that we want. And I also think that, just taking somebody's age and when they were born, it gives you one element of understanding who they are, but it certainly doesn't give you the nuances. It certainly doesn't give you what they need right now, what their wants are, what their interests are, what their needs are. It just groups people in a general label, which just aren't helpful anymore. So what you really want to be thinking about is, perhaps moving away from labels like millennials and really understand your audience. Because personalized campaigns, 72% of the time, success was based on the fact that messages were personalized and really responded to those tastes and needs of the users. So what we can do is use what we know about our audience to drive deeper segmentation. Having a millennial label might be a starting point, but within that, what are the interests of those millennials? What are the needs that they have at an individual person level? What are they doing right now? What have they bought from you before? So within what we like to call your data pyramid, you have lots of different levels and lots of different areas where you can dig into this data and really understand what your audience need, going beyond just those kind of general labels. So if we look at the bottom of the pyramid, and I'm just going to pick out a few things for you here, we've got that known data. So it might be collected through your sign-up forms, surveys, preference centers, but that is your kind of core zero-party data that somebody has told you about. Now, this is great, but again, same with the millennial label, we don't want to rely on this because known data, interests, demographic data that they've given you can absolutely change. So we can use that as a starting point and an addition to what we're doing, but what we really want to do is kind of jump higher up on that pyramid. Now, cultural data and contextual data are external sources of information coming in, so I'm just going to leave those to the side for this session. But what I want you to focus on then is at the top of the pyramid, your behavioral data and your purchase data. So behavioral data is, what are people doing with your emails? What are they opening? What are they clicking on? What are they visiting on your website? What are those pages that they're interacting with? What are the products or categories that they're interacting with? Are they viewing your FAQs page? We really want to be thinking about what's happening right now. So with behavioral data, if you can set up web tracking, then be looking at analyzing those pages and using it within your segmentation and personalization, but also to trigger emails based on those specific actions. And then right at the top, we've got your purchase data. So what have they done with you before? What have they bought from you? How much have they bought from you before? How much money have they spent? All of this tells you where they're actually putting their money down. And you can certainly use that to offer them related products and services. So within these areas, and specifically those three areas of known data, behavioral data, and purchase data, we really need to understand what we know about our audience. So one of the things that we do with clients is to look at a subscriber data audit, a strategic subscriber data audit. What do we know about our audience? How can we use that to better personalize, segment, and automate the campaigns that are sending out based on those similarities and differences within that data? So let's go past those general labels. Let's really dig into our information and understand what we know about our audience and how we should break them down. So giving you just a couple of examples and starting point stages for this, certainly those demographics from the known data are going to be really important to look at, and then looking at those previous products that have been purchased. Now, when it comes to those previous products that have been purchased, there is something that you can do. And certainly within the Spotler platform, you can look at plugging into that RFM analysis. So this is how recently has someone bought from you, how frequently do they buy from you, and how much money have they spent with you. And this is going to automatically create you segments all along the scale from your VIPs to your never done anything before, where you can really start to analyze how many people fall into that group, what's the value of those people, and how can we start to target them differently. VIPs, you're going to want to target very differently from someone who's bought from you once before, for example. And using this model can really help you to have those predefined segments that you can pull out and start to use for your benefit, and more importantly, for your subscribers' benefit, to get that personalization and relevancy into your messages. Now, this is definitely a kind of a B2C tool. You can adapt it a little bit if you're B2B, but actually if you're B2B, what you probably want to be looking at in terms of breaking your data down, certainly at a first instance and a first level, and remember that personalization and segmentation goes through multiple levels, not just one title at the top. You could definitely look at lead scoring. So lead scoring is a fantastic tool for B2B, which excuse me, takes different actions. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. Let me have a little drink. Give me a sec. There we are. So it takes different actions that your users are doing. So that might be downloading something, interacting with your emails, coming onto your website, requesting a demo of your platform, contacting your team. All of these will have different points levels depending on how far away or how close to the point of conversion they are. So again, what this is really doing is allowing you to sort through those people based on specific actions. What do they need next? How do we take them to the next stage of their journey with us? How do we warm them up so that they're hot enough leads that they can go through to our sales team, to our account management team, to then be spoken to about the different services we offer? So when you're thinking about breaking down your audience, think about that data pyramid. What is the data that you've got on them? Can you link that into RFM or lead scoring? Platforms like Spotler, and obviously you can see those examples on the screen, have these set up for you. If you can feed your data in, you can start to do that segmentation immediately on these slightly more complex levels. So it's really important to understand your audience. And actually, it's even more important to understand your audience, who they are, what they need, the tone of voice that's going to work with them, particularly nowadays with the rise of AI. Now, we couldn't have a webinar to wrap up 2023 and go into 2024 without talking about artificial intelligence. And definitely listen out for our new Email and Beyond podcast as we go into next year, because we have got an episode where Rich and I will be talking all about AI and its uses within marketing. But just to give us a little bit of background on that, certainly if we look at how marketers are starting to use AI and if they feel that it's effective for them, 50.7% feel that it's more effective than traditional approaches in email marketing. So I think what we need to do here is certainly understand, we've had a very fast rise of AI in 2023. We need to be thinking about how we use it cleverly going into 2024 to help us with our campaigns. It can't do everything for us, and we wouldn't want it to. We want to be driving that strategy, but certainly understanding your audience, being able to feed that information into the AI to help you create effective email marketing is really beneficial. So what we've seen in terms of companies using AI, 41 or over 41% saw improved revenue. Almost 13.5% improved click rates, almost 8% improved open rates, and just over 1% improved delivery rates. Now, I think what this is doing is really kind of underlying the importance of understanding your audience, writing for them in your emails, offering product recommendations, using that AI in multiple different ways to support your strategy. Now, the first way you can certainly do that is creating content. And this is something that, that we certainly do a lot. I hate a blank page. I don't know if you're like me, but I hate a blank piece of paper. So feeding in a starting point to ChatGPT, whatever other platforms you're using, certainly for me is really valuable. Now, 43% of marketers who use generative AI say that it's most helpful for creating those emails, creating that content, and 38% use it to actually write those emails. 21% of sales professionals who use AI in their roles say it's most useful for writing messages to prospects, helping really streamline what you're saying. And 32% say it's most useful for repurposing messages and adapting them to a different audience. So I think, again, for me, there's two ways with content here. There's give it a brief, tell it about your audience and say, write me 200-word introduction for an email or a sales email or a marketing email, whatever it is. You've got to be specific about those instructions. And of course, it can spit that out. But it will always need checking. It will always need editing. It will always need you to add into that as well. And as we help these systems get more and more targeted and learn about your brand, there may be less of that editing, but certainly for me and what I find with clients, if we use it, or certainly internally in eFocus marketing, having that review process is extremely important to make those adaptations. So you can take that content and use it to write it, or you can certainly take a piece of content you've written before and ask ChatGPT, for example, to make it more succinct for you. Give me this paragraph, but give it to me in 50 words. Make it really succinct, pull out those key points. So with content, there's lots of ways that you can certainly use it. Now, another way is to create A/B test variations for you. So, for example, if you want different variations of your subject line, of your call to action button text, of a headline that you're using within your emails, you can use ChatGPT to help you create those test variations. Now, what I will say is Rich and I have both kind of tested this out, and ChatGPT doesn't necessarily understand the nuance or the strategy of A/B split testing. So again, be very, very specific. What type of variation do you want it to create? Do you want it to have that psychological element of fear of missing out compared to urgency, or compared to any other psychological aspect? But you have to be specific. If you just say, give me 3 other variations of this subject line or call to action button text, you're going to get random variations. And when we're doing A/B testing, we need to be strategic. We need to have a very firm hypothesis. So understand that before you start asking these platforms to help you with variations. Be specific, know what you're testing. And another way that we can use AI is with segmentation. So certainly, a lot of platforms now are starting to build in these AI pieces where you can use predictive segmentation to understand, I've got a group of my audience over here who have taken this action. Show me people who are similar to them that might also have a high propensity to take that same action. And we can also use those machine learning algorithms to identify the groups of subscribers with similar characteristics or behaviors, really enabling those more targeted email campaigns. So if you've got access to some AI that helps you with segmentation, it's definitely worth looking at that. Now, one of the other things that it can do is help you with predictive recommendations. So again, as I spoke about a little bit earlier, it's thinking about this person has taken this action, bought this product. What are they most likely to go on and do next? So you can really help to push people through to the next stage, but also predict their behavior. So it could be predicting when they're most likely to make their next purchase based on what they've done previously, or if the AI is starting to see signs of somebody going towards inactive and then potentially unsubscribing at some point. So again, we can really use this to layer into our personalization and our segmentation to help us get more and more clever with what we're doing going forward. You can also, I mean, there's so many uses of this, right? You can also use something like ChatGPT or lots of other tools out there, and I'm sure there are much better tools as well, to give you performance and analysis on what has happened with your email campaigns and where are those areas of optimization. So you can certainly feed in that performance data and ask the tool to provide analysis of what worked, what didn't, how you might optimize these based on your next campaign. So that's definitely worth trying out, seeing if it gives you any tidbits, any little kind of tips and tricks that you could pull and use going forward. But all of this comes with challenges. Using AI comes with challenges. And as I mentioned, you really have to be specific and precise about those rules and information that you're giving to the platform to give you the best results. And the more information you can feed into it, the better results you'll get. The more background information you can give, the more brand tone of voice, you feed all of that in, and you're going to get better and better output as you move forward. And making sure that that AI generated content still aligns with your brand's tone and voice, really, really important. So again, that really links into being specific and precise, but also making sure that you are editing that content when it comes off the back of coming out of one of these platforms. And I think this really kind of leads us really nicely, and Rich, I'm going to throw this one back over to you at this point, but it leads us on to how AI regulation is really moving forward, because it's a fast moving industry, there's lots happening with it, there's lots you can do with it, as you can see. So Rich, do you want to tell us about what that regulation looks like? What is the UK government thinking?
Yeah, it's thinking a lot. I've actually been on a bit of a journey to understand this because I read it, I took an impression, and then actually 2 days ago I was doing something completely else. I thought, well, hang on, there's a different angle we need to. So hopefully my thought process is useful as well. The white paper here is called A Pro-Innovation Approach to AI Regulation. It was finalized, the latest version came out in August. It's still available on .gov.uk. As I say, 93 pages, very interesting to me, may well not be to you. So here's the abridged version. And it's very comprehensive, actually. I like the interesting from the introduction that it's crucial we create the right environment to harness the benefits of AI and the risks posed by AI can be addressed. So this is actually a very holistic, I'm sure if you are on LinkedIn or go to any marketing events, you'll have heard AI is going to kill us all. You'll have heard AI is the best thing ever invented and will never be replaced by anything else. And both can be true, and both are off the mark at some point. And the truth is somewhere in the middle, that there are enormous, as Kate has said, that even right now in what is probably quite an early stage of AI, there's so much it can do to help us do better, but there are already risks. And Kate mentioned it in her section, it was about Millenials, about unconscious biases in the data, and that's one of the things they've talked about in the white paper. As I said, it's very comprehensive. I mean, if you to take an extreme example, I think in America it was something like 1975 before women could open bank accounts in their own names. So if you were to take JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, one of these banks that's been around for 150 years plus, and they were to say who has the longer credit histories, who's got better long-term credit histories for things like mortgages or credit card applications, the data would say men historically perform better because they've got a lot more data. And that it's just the kind of thing you need to think about. We're not talking about over racism, sexism, whatever it is. It's the what's in the data that you haven't thought about or you need to think about. Garbage in, garbage out is as true for AI as it's been for any other tool since the dawn of time, and that's worth thinking about. So the part of the journey I've been on is I originally read this when initially we do not intend to introduce new legislation. Like, oh, okay, carry on then. But that actually makes it more important for you to pay attention, because things like the online safety bill, it was a new bit of legislation last year. I've lost track of where that's been. It got a lot of attention because it had really big implications for digital privacy, and a lot of people weren't happy with it, and it was trying to do a good thing, but maybe not the best way. That was a new bit of legislation. That was a meaty thing that the media, the press could get their head around and say that this is a thing that Parliament is doing right now. But what this paper actually says is we're going to try and build on what's already there. And for example, the Ministry of Defence has for over a year had its own AI ethics policy. I started reading that in order to talk about it. That's another some 50, 60 pages. We would have been here all day. So I've decided to step back, link to it there. You can read it and understand it in your own terms, in your own way, and how it's going to apply to you. So you might be in like a reverse Spider-Man thing. I'm quite proud of this because the issue that they're worried about is regulators having responsibility without power. I couldn't quite make that quite as pithy as Spider-Man makes it, but that's the power without responsibility is great. Responsibility without power just kind of sucks. Probably parenting is the analogy to that one. But what you need to take from this is that existing industry bodies are going to be given primacy in dealing with this, because the idea is that if you have the Ofcom for AI, whatever it would be, it would have to learn so many different rabbit holes, different industry fit, that it actually wouldn't be very efficient. That would be more difficult and bureaucratic to get their hands on. So the government wants to throw it over to your existing AI regulators. If you know who your current industry regulator is and you know where to get their news and things, great. If you don't know, learn, because that's where this change is going to come from. As I said, it won't be big headlines. It's not a new chunky piece of legislation that's going to be up for Commons votes and getting mentioned in Prime Minister's questions. It's going to be kind of quietly dealt with, and government just trying to lay out some guidelines and then saying, this is roughly what we want. Take it and apply it to your industry. So take it away, understand where it's going to go for you. And I can see we're already run down. I said we do 40 minutes of content. We've currently done 48, so I'm going to quickly wrap it up, and then you can pick our brains more as you like. And we've got a little summary from each. So the iOS thing. Know what devices your audiences are using. Is this a big thing for you, or is it like Spotler? Is it a minor 3% or less of your audience deal, and what actions do you need to take specifically anyway? And generally think about anything you do with third party cookies have gone now, third party tracking through links have gone, and I can only think it's going to get more and more that way, for better or worse. And what that means for marketers, we need to explore, but this is a long-term thing. Make sure authentication and unsubscribe processes are in place. Kate did a great job of pulling through the summary of that, the headlines. As I said, how you actually do it is actually beyond my brain to comprehend, but I've roped in a couple of our tech team in mid-January. We'll send out invites to all of you. I imagine you all got the emails to invite you to this one, so you'll get those as well. It'll be on the website. We'll talk about it on socials. There'll be pop-ups in the product reminding you of it, to get your head around it and get that in place soon. And for the last two sections, do absolutely use AI. Don't need to be scared of it. I think that the people best placed to deal with the changes are going to be those who kind of understand it. If you hold off of using it until you know what's going to happen, you'll be a bit too late. If you experiment with it, see which of your processes that Kate mentioned is good for, which it's not so good for, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. It can be purely personal preference, but understand how it's going to fit in. Keep an eye out on your industry regulators and .gov.uk, well worth checking out just to see how that keeps on evolving. So we can all use it well, use it properly, and use it legally, which is very important for everything we do. So those are our contact details. Thank you very much once again for joining us. That's how you can get in touch with our LinkedIn. Okay, I'm just gonna whip over the question module, see if we've got anything come in.
The questions at the moment, but if anyone does, this is your chance to get them into that chat box. I think Charlie has said it surely won't be long before Google scans the websites for lack of authentication. Potentially. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen from a website, but certainly from an email side, they are tightening up those barriers. But like I said, everything from that side is really best practice. It's what you should be doing for the health of your list and to really embrace your audience anyway. So if there's any of those elements that are missing from what you're doing now, get those in place. And I think even, Rich, we saw even with GDPR coming in, right? Most of what was said in GDPR that implicates what we're doing in email, it's best practice. It's, make it clear that somebody is signing up for emails, get a pre-checked, don't do a pre-checked opt-in, get that kind of positive action. So all of those things, in all honesty, best practice has been saying a lot of this for a long time. So anything with email is test it, see what works for you. But certainly the best practice is best practice for a reason, because we know that it's things that are really going to help your audience.
Yeah, there's also a bit there about Google scanning websites for content made by AI. But then Google has barred it. Bard is Google, right?
I think so, yeah.
So
that's a good question.
That's a very fun. I don't quite know what to think about that. That's just one thing, because
maybe it'll impact SEO.
There is, yes. Yeah, and there's also a thing where AI, if it's scraping the internet to take its data, then AI plagiarism, there is potentially a crossover there. So
it'd be interesting to see how that one pans out going forward, because I don't think there's any, and again, I'm not an SEO expert or a website expert, so someone might be able to tell me differently, but I don't think there's any impact right now of that. But certainly going forward, I mean, again, we can see Google and we can see Yahoo tightening up from the email side now. It was all best practice before, and all these, technologies were there ready to do it. But yeah, it'll be interesting, Charlie, to see what happens with that going forward.
What I wonder, it's just occurred to me, I might be completely off base here, but this might be manual input of your brand voice, because what's that? Charlie from Warwick University is that, like a lot of universities who offer similar courses are going to say similar things about those courses because that's it. And then different ESPs will have areas where we cross over. So the language that you use probably then becomes your defining factor, both for avoiding and also for being interesting. Like there is a spot. I've been actually working on writing down what the Spotler brand tone of voice is, and codifying it's actually surprisingly tricky. I think it quite fits the way that I wrote before I worked here anyway. So I think there's I mean, you can tell it's an interesting question by the way it's just got us both going, oh. But I think brand tone of voice is probably going to be your biggest benefit, because you will say things differently to how other people would say it, and that will be the difference, because
your brand tone of voice and also the customers that you're targeting. So when you really know your audience and understand your audience, it's, create me this piece of content with this brand tone of voice targeted to these people. So I guess it'll be unique in that sense, but yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see what 2024 brings in terms of regulation and other tightening up from those areas.
Absolutely.
Has anyone got any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes left before we wrap up. If there are any other questions, we are here to answer them. And don't forget that launching mid-January, Rich and I are bringing you a brand new podcast called Email and Beyond. So you'll be able to find that on both the Spotler and the eFocus marketing website, and we will send out information about that as well. But if you want to hear Rich and I talking all things email, we've got topics for B2B, B2C. We're going to be talking about data, about AI, a whole range of different things. We would love to see you over there, and it'll be available on YouTube so you can see our lovely faces. Or if you just want to listen to it through one of the podcast channels, then it will be available there. So we will let you know when that's launched, but we are so excited to bring you that.
Yeah. All right. Once again, Kate, thank you for being here. All you guys, thank you for joining in. Thanks for the question. Thanks for listening, the attention. I hope your strategic planning goes well. You have a great time off over the end of the year. If you're getting it, we come back fresh, smash 2024 out and go and do great things.
You got this, everyone. Understand your audience. Bring in AI to help you. You got it for 2024. Thanks, everyone. Bye.